Don't you realize? The next time you see Sky, it'll be over another town. The next time you take a test, it'll be in some other school. Our parents, they want the best of stuff for us. But right now they gotta do what's right for them. 'Cause it's their time. Their time. Up there. Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here. That's all over the second we ride up Troy's bucket.
The Goonies were kids who lived in the Goon Docks, a blue-collar neighborhood whose existence is threatened by the development of a country club. Sean Astin, playing Mikey, has led them on an adventure in search of One-Eyed Willy's rich stuff, a treasure everyone else had dismissed as mythical. For decades, contact centers have been like the Goon Docks, a place where good people do good work, but a place that never garnered much respect from the country club set. But just like One-Eyed Willy's rich stuff changed the course of the Goonies, the previously hidden treasure trove of data in the contact center is emerging through the power of technology, particularly AI. Rick DeLisi joins to discuss new research conducted by Glia and Metric Sherpa. Despite some current disconnects, he's excited about the evolution of the contact center and says right now, it's our time. This week on Next in Queue, we discuss the lasting impact of the effortless experience, navigating new metrics and expectations, what personalization really means, how contact centers are reinvesting in the age of AI, the emergence of AI for all, and the strategic value of contact centers. Let's get to it. Back to another episode of Next in Queue. Today in Queue, I've got Rick DeLisi. Rick, how are you?
Hey, Rob. Thank you so much for having me. Great to talk to you.
It's great to talk to you, too. Now, just so that we can give people a little bit of perspective on who you are a research analyst currently with Glia. You spent a decade and a half with Gartner, and you are an author of a couple of books that people might have heard of. Your most recent one is A Digital Experience. The one before that kind of went viral, The Effortless Experience. I have to imagine that the reaction to that was a pleasant surprise for you. Is that the case?
It is so interesting to see how the ideas in that book that's now more than 10 years old still seem to resonate about as clearly as they ever did. And that book started with such a humble notion, too. As part of a research project we were doing about customer research, we're trying to determine what's the single best question you could ask a person right after an interaction to predict what that person's going to do going forward in the future, their future loyalty. You know as well as I, Rob, that the standard questions in the industry have always been the CSAT question. How satisfied were you with that interaction? And of course, the NPS, the Net Promoter Score question, how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or colleague? And what we learned is immediately following an interaction, a customer's answer to either of those questions doesn't typically portend their future loyalty with a high degree of correlation. So we played around with a bunch of other questions and different wording and permutations and discovered that when you ask a person right after an interaction, how much effort was required for you to get what you needed? Their answer to that question is almost like a lie detector test. It's a nearly perfect correlation to that person's future loyalty. And so the lesson here is, at the end of an interaction, It's great when a customer says, wow, you guys are wonderful, or you went above and beyond, or I was dazzled or delighted by the experience. There's nothing wrong with that. But when a person says, that was just so much easier than I thought it would be, their future loyalty is virtually guaranteed.
Well, I wish companies would pay attention to this. I mean, it has been a decade, and yet we're still getting asked some of those more passé questions, if I can put it in those terms, every time that we interact with companies wide and far. So that's personally, that's a frustration for me, but I know that there are a lot of people banging the drum, and eventually people will pay attention. But we're not going to spend a ton of time talking about that. What I want to talk to you about is a new study that you recently partnered with Metric Sherpa. The name of that study is The New Equation: Redefining Value, Effort, and Impact in the AI Era Contact Center. And I had a chance to read this study. It's not terribly long, but it is incredibly informative. So you surveyed nearly 1,000 contact center leaders and executives. And I'm curious, based off of that, like, what was the most striking difference between kind of the quantitative data and the qualitative data that you pulled out of that?
What we're seeing is that the vast, vast majority of companies, and at Glia, we deal primarily with financial services companies, banks and credit unions, are somewhere in the midst of the AI era right now. There have been some companies in the past that have been a little bit hesitant or still taking a cautious approach. We're fully immersed in the AI era right now. But what we're learning is that the expectations and the measurements or metrics around AI are still really nascent. So as an industry, we've taken a step forward into this new era, but still trying to find our way in determining exactly how successful are we being. What is the reaction of both customers and our own internal employees, particularly frontline employees who deal directly with customers? And so there's a level of maturity that still needs to be reached in that area. And I see that very much coming in 2026.
It's funny to me that it seems like kind of business 101, a new adoption of a process or a tool, whatever that is you set out a goal and you set out a measure for success. And yet here we are talking about all of these companies that are struggling with identifying measures of success when it comes to AI. Why do you think that is?
Well, the contact center as an entity has always traditionally been measured across the standard goals of average handle time, customer satisfaction, some degree of employee engagement and satisfaction, or at least minimizing churn or turnover. But as we're now in this AI era, there are so many more aspirations to be achieved, far and beyond just efficiency. And what we're really seeing is that there's always been this conflict. You know this well, Rob, from your own experience. There's always been this conflict in the contact center business between efficiency, trying to keep costs as low as possible, and experience, trying to create a great 5-star consistent experience for customers. And when you ask companies which of those two is most important, the preponderance of organizations will say, well, they're both important. But traditionally, they've been in conflict with each other. I mean, so to speak, if you wanted to create the most efficient operation, you certainly could do that, but it would come at the cost of experience. Or if you wanted to create a Ritz-Carlton 5-star experience, you certainly could do that, but you'd need a budget that's always been unattainable, certainly in the contact center world. So this conflict, this tension, we believe has now been broken because using what we call AI for all, so AI at all levels of your organization, it is very possible to operate way more efficiently than ever before and create a way better experience for customers and employees than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny to me because if you ask people that question that you just talked about is, do we want to be efficient and reduce cost, or do we want to create experience? If you separate the answers from what is actually in operation, that'll tell you what they really value. And often it is the efficiency piece, because that's where the rubber meets the road. What do we spend money on? Where do we make cuts? What do we measure? And you'll see a lot of organizations, not necessarily the best in class organizations, but a lot of organizations do focus on just making sure things are cost efficient.
Sure. It's the old, what is the contact center there as? What does it represent? What's the mental model? And traditionally it's been as a cost center. We love gaining revenue from new customers, but we hate then having to spend a lot of money to support those customers. That's a classic view of the contact center as a cost center. So we get it. But what if it was possible to achieve efficiency well beyond what you were able to do before, but also increasing the quality of the experience? That breaks the tension, and that is a no-brainer in a way that was never possible before.
Yeah. So given the opportunities, what do you think's holding organizations back from just deploying AI in all these different ways to achieve better experiences and these efficiencies that you're talking about?
We think most of the hesitation comes from organizations that in general feel like a relationship with our customers is paramount to our success. Most banks and credit unions that we work with are community minded. They forge these personal relationships with people. And there's this fear that in the AI era, suddenly everything is going to be bot controlled. And now there's never going to be an opportunity to speak to a human. And we're going to lose the opportunity to create these deeper relationships. That is a realistic fear, and we get it. What organizations are missing, though, is that there's now the opportunity to match the interaction that each individual customer gets every time they come to you with the exact right need that they have. And so the way to think about this is, about half the times that you as a customer reach out to some company, especially a bank or a credit union, your need is simple, routine, quotidian, obvious. And those kinds of needs can be answered instantly now by virtual assistants. However, the other half do require a human, do require some kind of face-to-face or voice-to-voice interaction. And those now can be perfectly matched to that exact need or issue type. So the key here is to personalize interactions, but not to the individual person, which seems ironic, but rather to personalize to the exact need that that person has at the moment that they're reaching out to interact with you. And so what we've developed at Glia is a system and an entire work stream that allows organizations to match the right interaction to the right customer or member at the right time. And that is what allows for the deep personal relationships in situations where that makes sense, and also instant responses to simple questions where that makes sense.
I love that you talk about personalization in a different way, because I hear this. Everybody says, hey, we want to be more personalized, and we think technology is the way to achieve that. But there's also this concern that, right, in order to be really personalized, you need to know a lot about me. And there are absolutely people that say, hey, that verges on creepy. Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about isn't, hey, I know a lot about you. And certainly, right, companies have all kinds of data points on us, but it's not about being creepy and that I know exactly, you can think about this when we look at ads that pop up on our phones and we're like, I was just having a conversation randomly with someone about this thing. And then the next thing I know, my phone serves me up an ad for that. That verges on creepy. But being able to just send me to the right place to accomplish whatever task I need, That just feels easy. And
Yeah.
I feel like it goes a little bit back to this effortless experience, right? It reduces the effort on my end.
Yeah, I think what you've identified here, Rob, is that there's this merging or this conflation in most organizations between marketing and customer support and service. So, for example, when you're trying to reach out to people to offer new products and services, or to share some new promotion, or to create some new personalized offer, that's when knowing a lot about this person and their past history and their financial needs or their dreams and goals in life, that makes total sense when you're trying to attract new business. But when you're trying to serve and support the people who are already your customers, the personalization needs to occur at the exact moment that they've reached out to contact you. Certainly for the vast majority of companies, something like 95+% of all interactions are inbound, are driven by the customer. They had some particular reason, some need, some issue type that they're trying to resolve right now. But when you can hyper focus on that need versus a person's broader needs in life, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs kind of stuff, when you can focus on exactly the reason why this person is contacting us right now, you can create a very personalized interaction that may or may not require a human being.
I feel like you're talking about the difference between dating and having a real relationship for some reason, right? We are very different in how we behave when we're trying to attract a partner versus how we interact with an established partnership and relationship that we have with someone.
Yeah, and I think all too often the expectations about what the contact center does, how they interact with people, what the value of the contact center is, have been merged together with the goals and objectives of marketing. And they're really very separate. I'll give you an example. In marketing, one of the key objectives for any organization is mind share. How often can we get people to be thinking about us, and how can we get them to think about us longer and at a deeper level when they are thinking about it? So mind share, separating yourself from the competition, differentiating, all those things make total sense in the marketing world. So how much and how long can we get you to think about us? But now, when you consider service and support, isn't the real goal to get that customer to stop thinking about you? The minute their issue is resolved, they can then resume their everyday life, and they don't have to keep thinking about you or the problem or their concerns. So there's this dichotomy in what we're even attempting to do in the minds of our customers, which makes total sense on one hand for marketing, but it's the complete opposite for service and support.
Yeah, it's interesting. I recently had an interview on the show, and we talked about the difference between customer experience and the contact center. And this is a long-going theme, and people have varying opinions of this, but there is a difference in kind of the overall function and what we're trying to accomplish. And part of customer experience is marketing. And
Sure.
there's this separate function within the larger customer experience realm, which is service and support. And I love how you talk about just, hey, stop thinking about us. Let us take care of this so that you don't have to devote energy to this. And that should be the goal of any service and support organization, is let's keep you from having to deal with us.
Yeah, let's keep you from having to dwell on some problem or issue. And by the way, let's also create an experience that prevents you from ever thinking about going to some competitor or churning. One of the things we learned in the effortless experience research, this is a bit of a trick question, but I'll play this game with you here, Rob. What percentage of a company's customers are loyal right now? Have you ever heard this one before? It is a bit of a trick
loyal right
what
now.
What percentage of your customers are loyal right now?
Yeah, I mean, my guess is the number is 20% or less.
That's a common guess, and maybe this is semantics in the way we're asking the question, but we believe the answer is 100%, because they're your customers right now. And the point is, loyalty really isn't a present state consideration. From a company's perspective, loyalty is a prediction of what you're going to do tomorrow and a month from now and a year from now. And so the point is, companies try so hard to make their customers more loyal when in fact, certainly in service and support, what you ought to be doing is avoiding any potential that some interaction a customer has with you is going to make them less loyal. And so anything that's high effort, anything that's a hassle, anything that makes it feel like I'm being disrespected as a customer, anything that has a person even thinking to themselves, why did I even choose to do business with these guys? Because this is such a pain to get what I want or what I need. Those are the moments companies need to avoid.
Yeah, you have me thinking of some very specific examples in my head, and I'm not going to throw people under the bus, but I can tell you that I recently have made a decision to change a company that I work with for a particular service that I get on a regular basis. And part of it was because they made a change that made it less easy for me.
Yep.
They threw up an additional obstacle that previously had not been the case. And I just said, you know what? It's just not worth it anymore for the premium that I was paying to have you handle this for me. So I'm going to go somewhere else. Had they not made that change, I would have stuck around. It was really all that boiled down to.
Right. So whatever company that is might be thinking, here's Rob. He's really loyal to us because he's done business with us year after year after year. And, not to get inside of your head, but I'm thinking for the most part, Rob, that wasn't such a conscious decision of, wow, I really love this company, but more like, I'm just going to continue making my premium payments year after year, and I'm perfectly happy, and there's no reason to rethink that decision. But the minute you have some kind of a high effort, big hassle, pain in the butt interaction with that company, all of a sudden it triggers this new thought of, I wonder what else is out there. Or all of a sudden, the next time some competitor randomly shoves some offer into your inbox, suddenly you're opening that instead of just sticking it right in the trash can. And these are the moments that companies need to avoid. The moment where a customer who's been continuing to make payments or continuing to be loyal for months or years suddenly wakes up and goes, wait a minute, maybe I ought to rethink that decision. That's exactly what you need to avoid in service and support.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things as I was going through this study that you did with Metric Sherpa was when we talk about measurement, there were a number of different aspects that we could measure. And one of those was the strategic value of AI. And the number was, I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it was less than 50% of organizations are measuring that.
Yeah, well less. It's in the 20s. It's in the 20s.
That's crazy. Why is that?
Well, again, let's go back to the legacy mental model of the contact center being a cost center or the complaint department. Remember those days? But for organizations that now have the ability to tap into the data about every interaction they're doing with customers, whether that is virtual, whether that's through messaging or text, or whether that's through voice, being able to cull from every interaction you've ever done with every customer from today forward gives you this storehouse of powerful data that can be used to inform marketing decisions, new product development, the overall brand and direction of the company. It's rare that companies think of the contact center as the ultimate rolling focus group or customer database about potential new opportunities, but that is the truth. The problem is it's been too hard to dig into that data. If somebody from the C-suite said, let's do an analysis of how people are liking this new product, or what holes are there in the marketplace that we could potentially fill, or which demographic of our customers or which segment of our customers are more or less likely to be attracted to this or that product. Those are questions that are asked in marketing on a regular basis. but it'd be very rare to turn to the contact center for answers. But in a world where all interactions are being worked through a central hub or a central system, it's now possible to mine all of that information. At Glia, we call it AI for all. So there's AI applications that are directly customer facing. There's AI applications that are agent facing to make it easier for frontline people to have effortless interactions with customers. But there's also AI applications for managers and executives that allow you to explore anything within the world of customer data and ask any question you want. And when I say ask a question, I mean literally just ask any question. That's never been possible before. Or let's say if it was possible, you'd have to hire a team of analysts. They'd have to wade through hundreds or tens of thousands of calls, try to mine chat logs. I mean, it would be a huge undertaking to arrive at the same kind of insights and data analysis that you could do now, either by keystroking in a question or even verbally asking a question. It's never been easier to learn from your data. And so what is available for you to learn now provides opportunities and advantages and differentiation that never existed before.
So knowing that all of that is there, I guess my question is, what's hindering the awareness of the C-suite in organizations to being able to take advantage of that or look at contact centers differently? Because I imagine if they were aware of the value there, they would measure it. And the fact that they're not measuring it tells me that there's still a lack of awareness.
Yeah. Well, there's a lack of awareness and up until now, a lack of capability, or at least a lack of easy access to being able to spin up insights, conclusions, recommendations from this giant, seemingly amorphous pile of different interactions. Once C-suite executives see what is available to them, once they understand the logic behind matching the right interaction to the right customer and not the bots handle everything or vice versa, virtual assistants handles nothing and everything is live humans. Once they understand how to build the right ratio based on each individual customer's need, and then to see that provides this incredible storehouse of information that allows each interaction to continue to be better based on what we've achieved in our previous interactions. It's this cycle of continuous learning and improvement that occurs when the AI helps your humans become smarter. And when your humans help the AI become smarter, it becomes this virtuous cycle of continuous improvement that, once again, never existed before. So lack of awareness is a soon-to-be historical consideration, because right now, C-suites are finally becoming aware of the fact that the contact center is way more than just a cost center. It is the strategic hub and the beating pulse of our customer population.
So now that we've got this beating pulse and we are paying attention to it, there are obviously going to be some financial advantages that come with that. Some come with automating certain low-hanging fruit, right? Yeah. There are things that we have seen over the last couple of years, easy things like just summarizing a customer interaction and leaving that as the note so that the agents don't have to do it, right? That's like the lowest of low-hanging fruit. But as we increase these automated services that we can provide, there's obviously some cost savings. What are contact center leaders or organizational leaders doing with these financial gains? Are they just going to get rid of all the agents?
That's not what we're seeing. We're seeing what we call three options. And by the way, Rob, these are three options that never existed before. You know, the historic background of the contact center has always been, the legacy has always been, we're understaffed, we're under budgeted. You know, nobody wants to commit new initiatives to the contact center. We get it, because that's been the historic view. But when you start to think of the contact center as being not only the lifeline or the direct connection to our customers and the relationship we've built with them, but also as a data storehouse and also as an insight warehouse. What we're seeing now is that organizations are either reinvesting some of that budget. Again, some of the contact centers we're working with right now are recognizing that about 50% of all the previous live human interactions they're doing can be automated to the great and perfect satisfaction of customers. That additional doubling of capacity can be used to reinvest in additional training, in being able to help frontline people become better at revenue generating activities like identifying upsell opportunities, to reinvest in community programs, even in some cases to reinvest in additional technology to continue that virtuous cycle. So the whole strategy of reinvesting or reallocating or even right sizing without necessarily sending thousands of pink slips out to people who we don't think we need anymore. That's just not what we're seeing. We're seeing a renewed focus on being able to use our resources even more wisely, because we don't have to spend as much money supporting tens of thousands of live phone calls.
Yeah, I think it is incredibly prescient for people to be able to, within an organization, to be able to just use their people for tasks and activities that honestly are going to keep them more engaged at work. And we've seen this over time, right? The old password reset.
Right.
We should have long got past resetting your password through automated systems. It didn't involve AI, but that was, can you imagine being the agent who's just resetting passwords all day long, every day? Like, how much do you hate that job? And there are other things that we can automate away to help employees feel like they're doing something meaningful at work, as opposed to just doing something that a robot should easily be able to do.
Yeah, we did a psychological analysis not so long ago about VIP experiences. So in other words, when you're lucky enough to be a VIP, what is the psychic benefit that you get? And it comes down to a couple things. Number one, before you even show up for this VIP experience, the people there already know you're coming and they know who you are. So not just being recognized by name, because we looked at your ID and now we're just trying to repeat back your last name, but we actually know who you are. Number two, we've already started an experience before you even get there that's been designed for you based on your needs or your interests. So you're being treated to an extra special experience that's catered to you. And number three, the people who you're interacting with are excited to be interacting with you, and they're excited to create a memorable experience for you. Now, all those things have typically not been possible in the everyday world of working in a contact center. But think about it this way. In today's world, where about half of interactions can be handled perfectly with virtual assistants, the 50% that require a human should be a human who's being aided by AI and virtual assistants, agent facing, that helps them identify who this customer is before they even say hello to them, and likely what their issue type or need is. So it's the difference between, "Hi, I'm Rick, how may I help you?" the generic intro to virtually every customer interaction throughout the dawn of time. It's the difference between that and, "Hey, Mr. Dwyer, it looks like you're trying to apply for an auto loan. I can totally help you with that. In fact, I've already gotten started on that." Think about how different that is. That the agent already knows who you are and knows what your issue type is, because the system has informed them and it pops up on their screen. Here's Mr. Dwyer. Here's the last couple of interactions he's had. Here's what he's already said is his need or issue type. And here's some guidance for how you can provide that solution or that resolution so that you're not going through 20 different screens. I mean, it simplifies the process for both sides and allows the human agent to concentrate on just being a human being instead of having to be a human robot. So ironically, AI is helping humans be more human.
So there was another number that jumped out to me. in this study. And I may not have the exact number, but I'm pretty sure the number was 83%. And that was the usage of voice as a service or support channel.
Yep.
And I'm thinking about how we've been talking about the death of the contact center for, I don't know, a couple of decades, probably. Like, no one's ever going to call a contact center because we're going to chat or we're going to email or what have you. Now, I'm wondering where you see the future of the voice channel, kind of the most established, like just pick up the phone and call someone. Is that finally going to start to dissipate? Is it just going to change because we're going to be talking to virtual agents? In other words, AI that sounds like a person. Where do you see the future of that headed to?
We see the future of human communication as being simplified. I mean, there's another irony is that as we're now becoming fully immersed in this AI era, it's not a matter of what technology can do, but how simply it can be accessed by your own voice. And that can be your own voice dialing 10 digits and calling on the phone, or it could be your own voice and having a digital interaction where you're communicating with your voice and then immediately either having your issue be resolved by virtual assistants or being connected to a live agent who, again, already knows who you are and already knows what your issue is. And by the way, you could say, well, that sounds like it might be true for younger people or those who are more tech savvy or those who are digitally native. And certainly that is true. But, you know, my parents who were in their late 80s and early 90s, who would tell you in a survey, we don't like AI and we don't trust bots. They've been using their Alexa for like 8 years now. So asking for things by voice and getting an instant response is now becoming more like the way we communicate. And again, in situations where virtual assistants can completely resolve your issue, then that voice coming back to you will be an AI voice. But if you need to speak to a human, or if that's just something you greatly prefer, it's going to be a human whose performance and efficiency is aided by AI tools that make their job that much more rewarding and way less of a grind, like you mentioned before. 10 people in a row calling just to find out what's your balance or what's your routing number. I recently did an interview with a woman who's the head of CX for a bank in Connecticut. And she said something so simple and profound, and that is, there's no inherent value in getting your balance from a human being than from a virtual assistant.
Yeah. Unless they're going to be really excited to tell you you've got way more money than you expected.
That I can't relate to. So if you've got a story, you
Me
go
neither.
for it.
I'm still waiting for that to happen. I'm wondering, particularly as you work with a lot of banks and credit unions, this is probably more a credit union question than a bank, though not necessarily. There is just such a wide range of sizes. And I'm wondering if there is a certain AI readiness that comes with a scale. I have to imagine if you're one of these banks that we all know, a Wells Fargo or a Capital One or something like that, Chase, right? They're probably really ready and have already implemented a lot of tools. But if I'm the local small town community credit union, what are some of the challenges that those smaller organizations face when it comes to adopting some of these new AI tools?
I just push back on you a little bit, Rob, because the only challenge is in recognizing that this is a possibility that exists right now and that it's surprisingly easy to implement. And so some of our favorite stories at Glia are stories of extraordinarily conservative or traditional banks or credit unions that are suddenly realizing these tools that are available right now are not just for Fortune 500 companies. They're not just for, Bank of America or Wells Fargo, that they're now accessible and work perfectly in the everyday interactions that local credit unions or community banks are having with their customers and members every day. So there is no more barrier. The only barrier is in recognizing that there's no barriers.
Is that because, I was thinking about this morning, is that because the products and services offered by most financial institutions are, for the most part, the same thing that was offered 40 and 50 years ago? I mean, you've got savings and investment products, and you've got lending products, but look, there are only so many different mortgage options out there. There are only so many different CD options or savings or money market options available for any institution. Is that part of the reason that there's just less variability in the business?
Yeah, that takes shape in a couple of different ways. From the standpoint of customer needs, when you take a look at the top 20 issue types or the top 20 reasons a customer would call or go online to resolve an issue with a bank or credit union, first of all, those 20 issues comprise about 80 to 90% of all interactions. So it is, to your earlier point, the same kinds of inquiries over and over again. But if you were to compare, a 10,000 member credit union to Bank of America, what you'd see is, by and large, most of those top 20 issues are the same for both. And that's both a comfort because organizations recognize there's not 1,000 different reasons that customers are calling you or contacting you, but it also makes it so hard to differentiate because you're right. The services offered by gigantic organizations, local organizations, membership-driven credit unions, they're all largely the same. Yes, there's some idiosyncrasies, but by and large, to your point, every credit union, every bank is offering about the same thing to their membership. So to truly differentiate, it can't just simply be on products or rates. Our mortgage is, a 16th of a point lower. I mean, that may be some advantage, but it's not a gigantic sea change from one organization to another. So the experience that you're providing to your customers, and by the way, the experience that you're providing to your frontline people who are providing experiences to your customers is the real differentiator. And now it's possible for even, a very small 5-seat contact center to provide the same exact service as a mega bank.
Mm, yeah. Well, and that certainly could be a huge difference maker for that small community bank or credit union to be able to compete with some of those larger organizations that traditionally it's been very challenging.
Yes. And so now the real differentiation is your identity in the community. It is the relationships that you forge. It is how you bring people together, not just as customers, but as members of a community. That's the thing the mega banks can never do. And so if you're offering the same exact products and the same or higher level of service, and you're providing this glue or this continuity or this connection between people in a community, that's a differentiator that you can truly stand on and that sets you apart.
I'd love to hear from your perspective when you think about how contact center leaders are approaching using AI in their contact center. If you could change one thing about that approach, what would that be?
Is recognizing this idea of, again, as we mentioned before, AI for all. Like, it's real easy to think of AI as a thing. And when you think of it as a thing, it's almost always a customer-facing thing. And that's just part of the AI for all story. When you think about the tools and resources that are available for your frontline agents to make their jobs easier, to make them more satisfying, to give them an opportunity to connect better with the customers that they're interacting with. When you think about the tools that are available for supervisors and managers to be able to do things like workforce management, to be able to do things like quality assurance, to be able to be better trainers and coaches. And then when you think about what's available for executives through AI for all, to be better leaders and to drive deeper insights and to be more strategic. It's almost like the customer facing part of it, which can sometimes seem the scariest, is only just, one color in the rainbow here. And so to broaden your perspective about what AI can do for your organization, for your leadership, and for you personally is the doorway through which you can then start to see that the strategy and the philosophy of AI for all makes total sense.
Yeah. It strikes me too that it's important for operations to have a seat at the table when we're talking about implementing AI, because I know a lot of times it's coming from a board or it's coming from the C-suite. And look, in some organizations, there's a pretty big disconnect from how things operate in the contact center from the C-suite view. What do contact center leaders need to do to make sure that they have that seat?
Well, to demonstrate that they are not only capable of, but are currently driving strategic value. This massive study that we did is really all about the value that AI brings to contact center operations and then, of course, to the companies that they serve. And so when you speak the language of value versus the language of customer service, you're definitely going to get more ears and more mind share in the C-suite. And so because it's possible to not only drive value in ways that were never possible before, but to measure it, there's a very good chance that even the most hesitant or reluctant C-suites will at least give you the opportunity to pitch the idea of evolving to an AI for all strategy, because it really is about driving the very same outcomes that the C-suite is so concerned about. Revenue generation, customer competitiveness, lifetime value, overall operational efficiency. I mean, everything that matters to the C-suite is encapsulated in this strategy we're talking about. And again, that only seemed like a pipe dream like 2 years ago. And yet here we are.
It is wild to think about how quickly things are moving. And I think that's why it's really important that leaders, regardless of where you are functionally in an organization and regardless of what level you are in an organization, that you're paying attention to what's happening as it relates to AI, because the pace of change has been so dramatic. I remember just a few years ago, we were like, some people will go, oh, like 6 years ago, this happened. No, folks, it wasn't 6 years ago. Like, trust me, it's all been compressed. What's happened in the last 2 to 3 years is astounding. That pace is likely to keep up for a while. And it's important that you recognize what is possible. And I love this idea of AI for all, but it needs to be strategic, and we need to have everybody on board as opposed to just throwing one little thing at a discrete problem just to solve it for you, because that could create other potential problems.
Yeah. That's why Glia has been the pioneers of what we call channelless architecture, which means every element of all your digital interactions, all your voice interactions, and all of AI is brought together in a seamless platform so that everything communicates with everything else, and that the results of any or all interactions you have are all centrally available so that you can derive insights from them, that you could do instant analysis from something as simple as, how well are people taking to a new product to, how well do the people who work for this one supervisor interact with customers compared to frontline people who work with another supervisor, or how well do we do on Mondays at 9 a.m. compared to Fridays at 5 p.m. I mean, the point is you can ask any question and get an instant answer. And by the way, that also means you can ask questions that don't necessarily yield a specific insight or result. And that's one of the unexpected elements of AI for all, is that in a world where if you have an inquiry or if you have a hypothesis about something that you might want to learn about, and you have to then assign a whole team of data analysts to come up with some information and then wait for a month to get the results, you're going to be hesitant in what you're going to ask. You're only going to be asking for things that you know there's an insight or there's a direct data point that you can then use that will result from that analysis. But when you can just sit at your keyboard and ask any question and get an instant answer, they don't all have to be gems or genius insights. It's almost like panning for gold. As long as you know there's going to be some gold in the pan, it doesn't really matter how much dirt you take up. You know there's going to be something good in there. And if there's no additional cost for asking a bunch of interesting questions, you never know what you're going to learn. But it's always going to be something. And even if you don't learn something, it allows you to reformat what you're thinking about or the correlations you're trying to draw or the analysis that you're trying to do to learn something even more valuable with your very next question, which, by the way, can come 10 seconds later.
I love it. I love it. Well, look, folks, if you've got a question for Rick, you can connect with him on LinkedIn, and you know how to do that. Go down to the show notes. You will find that link. You'll find a link to Glia. And also, you'll find a link to our friends at Metric Sherpa. So go check out this report that Justin prepared along with Glia. It really is fascinating. And if you've got additional questions, you can always reach out to Rick. Rick, thank you so much for joining me on Next in Queue today.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. It is clear that we are of one mind and also of one hairstyle, if I may be so honest. But it is so fun to see the evolution of this whole profession. And now that it's clear that the contact center is not just the cost of doing business or those people over there, but really is, as we said before, at the beating heart of understanding the marketplace and our brand and our products. It is time. It is our time to shine, and it's never been easier to shine.
Next in Queue is produced by me, Rob Dwyer. Theme music is courtesy of Big Red Horse. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with at least one person. Word of mouth is the best way for people to discover new content. And thanks for listening.